Welcome to the Stimpack Podcast. Stimpack is a Haiti-focused think tank and interventional NGO.
As a disclaimer, before we get started, this episode recounts the torture of one of my fellow captives, Stephanie. Stephanie will, during the course of our captivity, become like family to me. I don't share her story lightly. We discussed this at length, and she feels that if there is any chance that her sharing her story will possibly raise awareness to the atrocities occurring in Haiti every day, that she is willing to share. I ask that you, as readers, treat her story with reverence for the courage it takes for her to allow me to share it. Day 4, torture. Saturday morning, I wake up ready for progress. I'm hoping that Bill has finally come through for me. I brief Curvins about my plan. If there is no progress with Bill and his contact, then I'll negotiate for myself. I'm treading lightly with Curvins as he is a captive as well and has been there for 25 days. That captivity has taken a toll on him emotionally. So when I ask him to translate for me, I'm asking for a favor. He agrees. Around 10 a.m., Chef Jeff comes in with a stack of phones. Stephanie and Sarah talk to him for a bit about their cases. Curvins and I talk with him. Curvins goes first. He gets up off the mattress and walks over to Chef Jeff. They talk for a minute about Curvin's case. Chef Jeff is waiting for more cash from Curvin's family since the first payment was, quote, lost. They discuss possible timing. Then it's my turn. I get up and stand next to them with my arms folded. I ask if he's heard from Bill's guy. He hasn't been able to reach him. I ask if I can negotiate on my own behalf because no one in my family speaks Creole. He says maybe, but that he will have to ask his chef. For some reason, they never call their chef over the phone. They always leave the building and go down near the bottom of the hill to talk to him in person. Chef Jeff leaves the room. We hear him in the house for a while before he gets dressed and leaves. I'm presuming they are going to agree and begin negotiating with me directly. I'm trying to decide on an approach. In negotiations, you never want to be the first one to say the first number. Chef Jeff has said the first number, $2 million. However, he knows that's not a real number. He's just price anchoring, saying a number and hoping I will split the difference. Because he hasn't said a real number, I still need to get him to say a number. I need to know what he really wants. This is going to be tricky. Similar to a car salesman who has a manager sitting somewhere else in the car dealership, Chef Jeff has his chef, who he is representing. He needs to please his boss. I need to know what he's been ordered to get out of me. Around 2 p.m., Chef Jeff returns. There's a lot of soldiers around. I don't know why, but there is definitely something going on. Chef Jeff calls Curvins and I out of the room and into the common area / kitchen. He is ready to negotiate. He demands $2 million again. Hoping to get him to say a real number, I respond with something like, "That's a huge number. No one has that kind of money. How am I supposed to come up with that kind of money?" In my experience, that kind of phrasing will put the other side of the negotiation in your shoes and begin to get them to see things from your point of view. It's an effective negotiating tactic. It doesn't work in this case. Instead, he motions to the packing tape and taser on the table just to his right. Surprisingly, it hadn't occurred to me that I might be tortured as part of these negotiations. The Toussaints and Curvins had told us that they had never been beaten or tortured. The only beating they had witnessed was when a fellow captive tried to escape through the T-bar ceiling. He was caught and beaten severely with a heavy metal scale. So I wasn't expecting the threat of violence as a negotiation tactic. I expected him to threaten to kill me, but considered that unlikely at this point. The packing tape and taser on the table threw me off. I still needed to figure out what his real number was, but I was having a hard time staying focused now that torture was literally on the table. I started low. I said something like, I think my wife can find something around $30,000 of our own. Curvins translated. Chef Jeff shook his head and grabbed the tape. I said, wait, perhaps if I call some family, I might be able to find some more. Maybe another $20,000. I waited for a response. Curvins translated. He said no, again. Chef Jeff picked up the taser and motioned for us to go back into room 1. In retrospect, I should have relented. Even $50,000 was too high. I was at the top of the market with that amount, but I wasn't thinking about the market. I didn't know that I was going to be there for 30 days, no matter what. I should have taken my beatings and waited my 30 days. Instead, I said directly in Creole, wait, I may be able to find some friends to give me another $20,000, and that would bring us up to $70,000. Chef Jeff continued to usher us back into room 1. I continued, or, I don't know, maybe even $80,000 or $100,000. Chef Jeff stopped walking. He looked at Curvins and asked, what was that last number, he said? Curvins repeated, $100,000. Chef Jeff looked at me. His body language changed. He said that if I could get $100,000, then his boss would likely agree to that deal. Knowing that I still needed to play hard to get, I whined and griped about it for a bit. I told him that I will do my best, but I make no promises. He seemed pleased. I'm annoyed with the idea that I will be putting so much cash into their pockets, but I'm pleased to be finally making progress after 4 days. Chef Jeff gives me my cell phone to begin working on getting the cash. I now need to get my money from the U.S.-based bank and into Haiti somehow. Then, once it's in a Haitian bank, I will need to get it converted into cash. The gang prefers U.S. dollars because that is the preferred currency of the arms traffickers typically based in Miami. The problem is that U.S. dollars are hoarded in Haiti, so the banks don't let it out easily. In an effort to address this issue, I reach out to Gunny, a security contractor I've worked with for several years. I call Gunny. He is already aware of my situation and is eager to help. Music to my ears. I ask if he has access to up to $100,000 US. He says yes. It would take him about 24 hours, but he could get it. He's out of the country, but is on his way back. Perfect. I tell him to look out for my brother-in-law to reach out to him to wire him the money. I hang up the phone. I call Mary's older brother, Aaron. Aaron has handled several investments for me and has access to my finances. I call him to get him to wire $100,000 to Gunny. However, Curvins is listening to my calls and translating them to Chef Jeff. In order to convince Curvins and Chef Jeff that the $100,000 is difficult to get, I am trying to speak in code to Aaron. I'm trying to communicate to Aaron that I need the money right away, but I need Aaron to pretend that it's hard to get. What I did not consider is how hard it is to receive such a phone call, and thus incredibly difficult to decipher any intended subtlety. However, following the call, I was confident that Aaron either understood my request or would piece it together after the fact. I texted Aaron and Gunny to connect them to each other. I was feeling hopeful that after a few days, I would reach out to them and they would have the cash ready. I would then tell Chef Jeff that a miracle has occurred and my family and friends had finally raised $98,527 US. We'd make a rendezvous plan. Voila, I'm free.
Let me start by giving you some context from before the call with Jeff. It had been 3 days since Jeff's capture and 3 days of seemingly constant phone calls, prayers, tears, and worry for Mary, me, my wife Rachel, and my youngest sister Anne. The survival and safety of Jeff in Haiti and Mary with their 7 children in Florida were all we could think about. We had been informed that the gangs had several ties to Haitians in Florida, so we weren't yet sure about the safety of their home. The children had stopped going to school and all their activities in order to keep a low profile until we learned more. I was under strict orders not to discuss Jeff's kidnapping with anyone. This was very important to protect his life, and we all kept this secret perfectly. Jeff had placed some money with my company, and I knew that obtaining a large sum was achievable if it meant getting him home safely. As soon as Mary gave the word, Rachel and I were ready to drop everything so that she and I could be in Florida with Mary and our nieces and nephew as much as possible. Up until this point, we were under the impression from Mary that this might resolve quickly and that Jeff could be home within days. But if not, we were readying our household to go help as much as we could. Rachel and I were living with a cloud overhead. Tears and emotions were near the surface as we felt dread and worry for my little sister and her family. Mary had explained to Rachel and me that Jeff isn't able to use his cell phone freely and that when he spoke with her, he didn't sound like himself. The speculation was that he's being controlled and observed by the kidnappers 100% of the time. We had no idea whether or not they spoke English or if they could understand what he was saying. Now to the call. When the phone rang, it shocked me to see that it was coming from Jeff's cell. It didn't feel plausible that Jeff himself would be calling me. And while it may be his voice on the other end, he surely wouldn't be alone. He'd likely be threatened to say and relay specific words and messages under duress. In the few seconds it took for me to answer the call, all sorts of possibilities rifled through my mind, like a kidnapper is calling to threaten me and my family for money, or Jeff has already been hurt or killed and the gang is starting through his phone in alphabetical order demanding money, or that the gang is going to demand cash and threaten my little sister in some new fashion. Or has Jeff already been hurt? If it is Jeff calling, will I recognize him? So I answer, "Hello, this is Aaron." Jeff says, "Hi, Big A. Are you aware of my situation?" Me, "Yeah, I think so." I feel very nervous because I think I'm addressing multiple people who are causing Jeff and Mary extreme terror. Jeff says, "I'm going to ask you a question, and it's okay if you take as much time as you need to think about the answer. And you don't have to answer right away. Are you understanding me?" I answer, "Yes, I understand." Jeff says, "Are you able to round up $100,000 in order to pay for my release?" Again, take your time. At this point, multiple scenarios are now running through my mind. Like $100K is not hard to find. Of course, I'll do that in a split second. Why does he keep saying, "take my time"? Could Mary lose her husband if I botch this? Dear God, what do I say right now? I am so nervous. I pause for a moment, and then I say, "Jeff, I am so sorry. There is no way I can find that kind of money. I'd do anything to help you, but this sounds impossible. It can't possibly cost this much to get you home safely. I am so sorry, but there is no way." Silence on the other side of the call scares me into thinking I've already ruined everything and now Jeff's going to be hurt or killed and that it's all my fault. So I quickly add, "But I'll do anything I can. I'll do anything I can to get all of our friends and family to scrape together as much as possible. I'll do anything." Jeff says, "Okay, Aaron, it's okay. I'm going to appoint you as my negotiator, and I'll be introducing you to some people here. Stay close to the phone and wait for calls or texts from me." And I say, okay, be safe, brother. I love you. We are praying. Jeff says, okay, gotta go. And the call ends. I leave my home office and find Rachel to tell her the full script. Then she got Mary on the phone. Mary listens to my account of the call and then immediately conferences in the FBI, the two agents assigned to Jeff's case. They ask me to repeat the conversation. Upon doing so, one of them asks me, what do I do for a living? I tell them I work for a land developer. She asks me if I've been trained in hostage negotiations. No, never. What did I do wrong? Is Jeff going to be worse off because of me? They proceed to tell me that I handled the call perfectly, and the best case scenario was what I had unwittingly done, which is to make it seem impossible to come up with money. Totally counterintuitive to what I was feeling. I firmly believe that my plea to God was answered with the right words to say to Jeff in that moment. The FBI goes on to explain to me that immediate family typically offers the money and payment to kidnappers in a rush of panic and worry, and that in effect makes the hostage remain for much longer in their custody as a human ATM. After the call, Rachel and I knew we should no longer wait for Mary to tell us to come. Without discussing it with her, we booked Rachel a one-way red-eye flight to Florida. We knew she would need to manage the household while Mary was learning how to orchestrate the impossible. This was not like the movies at all. The FBI would not be there to hold her hand. In fact, they were severely limited in what they could offer, mostly advice and statistics. It would be up to Mary to coordinate Jeff's release, and she couldn't do it alone, also while trying to maintain the charade the family was performing that nothing was wrong and keep Jeff's reality off the radar of the media and locals, any of whom might be domestic contacts the gang could rely on to establish the Frazier's wealth, which would keep him a hostage even longer. Jeff's life depended on so many miracles, and so we prayed incessantly for guidance, protection, and comfort. Rachel flew to Florida, then I joined her a week later, once I had carefully organized my work and church responsibilities without disclosing anything about the situation to anybody.
Not long after I finish my call and Curvins finishes translating it to Chef Jeff, 7 or 8 kidnappers storm in the room and tell Stephanie and I to lay face down on 2 separate mattresses. Bad Cop is there. I don't quite understand what he wants me to do. I ask him a question. He punches me in the ear. I lay down and put my arms behind my back, not knowing what's going on. Maybe the $100,000 wasn't enough of an offer. They start taping Stephanie up. They tape her legs and hands together behind her back. The tape cuts into her skin. They torture Stephanie mercilessly while on the phone with her negotiator and family. They leave the room and go into room 2. We hear screaming. While they are away, Sarah and I try to care for Stephanie by supporting some of her weight to relieve the tension of being hogtied. They come back in, more terrible. They leave again. We try again to help her. I am able to stretch out some of the packing tape. I give her a priesthood blessing. Chef Jeff comes back in. He's yelling at someone on the phone. He leaves again. He comes back in with street food, a luxury. He hands out a styrofoam container to each of us. Stephanie is still tied up. We don't know what to do. Someone asks if we can untie Stephanie. He responds as if he's forgotten that she's tied up. We all jump in and begin to cut the tape off of her wrists and ankles. Her hands are dark blue. Chef Jeff then sits to eat with us and starts speaking sweetly to Stephanie, like the previous 20 minutes hadn't happened. At one point during Stephanie's torture, Curvins makes comments that are sympathetic to the kidnappers. Something like, "Chef, I told them the rules." He was trying to align himself with the kidnappers as a survival mechanism. This is a deep betrayal to the other captives and underscores the reality of Stockholm Syndrome.
We hope you enjoy this episode of the Stimpack Podcast and will subsequently share it with your friends and colleagues. Thank you for listening. This podcast has been brought to you by Stimpack Inc., copyright 2024. All rights reserved.